Oakland County Planning Commission, Monday, April 16th at 6 o'clock-ish. Our first order of business is invocation by our chaplain.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pray with me if you'd like. Father, thank you for this day, the beautiful sunshine that we've had, and the variable weather that has kept us interested, and we're appreciative for just the diversity of our experiences, for the planet you've created in this wonderful area of the country we have to live in. Help us to do our part tonight, and everything that we can bring to this table to help this county to grow, to prosper, to make the best of it can be beyond what we can see, beyond our wisdom, only by you. We pray that this would be your meeting in your name.
All right, pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the approval of the March 19th meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
No question. So approve.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections?
Let Gwen do that next time.
All right, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public
Oh,
comment.
yeah. My bad, you. I believe an arrangement was made between Mr. Gilster and Mr. Smith for Mr. Smith to speak before Mr. Gilster. Is that correct? Excellent.
So I guess it's Mr. Smith first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Smith, and I wanted to comment about item 9 on tonight's agenda. I am an ex, and I want to remind you of ex-member of the BZA Ad Hoc Committee that helped put together the proposal you have before you. This committee was formed because the BZA has asked for help in doing a better job when communicating with the public when a special exception proposal comes before them. The problem is that the communication process is not codified and needs to be for consistency and to keep the public better informed as the county grows. Please recall these points when you discuss and vote on this matter. Major parts of this proposal were voted on by the ad hoc members and passed. During your discussion phase, you may hear why certain parts of this proposal should not be adopted. However, to hear the other side of the discussion, I hope you will relax protocol and allow Jim Codner to present the other side of the debate. We should all acknowledge that the county is growing and not everyone has large tracts of land. Therefore, when a special exception becomes before the BZA, more people may be affected by their decision than in the past. Most people want to be good neighbors, so frequently a reasonable effort by the applicant is all that is needed to ease concerns from local residents. To do this, we need to be sure the communication process is robust. Let me comment about one point that was brought up a couple of times during the ad hoc meetings. Cost involved with some of the proposals. First slide, please.
Yeah.
This slide shows my guess at the cost for a special exception hearing. Perhaps it's time to review and revise the fee schedule when applying for a special exception hearing. Blank the slide. I don't know how fees are determined, but they should cover a greater cost of doing this type of business. Second slide, please. This slide shows how many special exception hearings were held in 2017. Notice that the majority were for cell towers. How many more cell towers will be constructed is an open question. You can blank the slide, please. Cell towers can create controversy because of their height and lack of aesthetic appeal. One additional proposal that is not before you but might be added to the proposal is when a cell tower proposal comes forward, the contractor creates simulated computer-generated photos of what the tower will look like from different directions and distances. Perhaps you should consider including certain simulated photos when mailing information to area residents about the hearing. Not all the generated photos need to be included, but only the 1 or 2 photos showing the view that the recipient of the letter will see from his or her property. Let me close by repeating myself. The BZA is trying to do a better job communicating with the public and is asking for help to do this. This proposal has their input and full support from their members of the ad hoc committee. For future consistency, citizen participation, and transparency, it needs to be codified. I'm sure the BZA would appreciate your support of this proposal as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Gilster?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bill Gilster, and I'm talking about the same item, item number 9 on the agenda. As you recall, this all really started when people that would come to the BZA meeting that were potentially impacted by special exceptions or variance requests constantly complained to us that they didn't have enough time from the point in which they got a notification to the time where there was the meeting. So that was kind of the impetus that decided to form this committee, that there was uncomfortable about not that the people were not giving enough notice to be able to analyze the impact on them. They would get the letter in the mail, and maybe the next week would be the meeting, and they wouldn't have any time to respond. So the question is, well, what is the appropriate amount of time, and what is our current standard? That's when we looked into it and realized that in the code, doesn't tell us what that notification process should be. It's not in the code, but there's a practice. So we formed the committee. The committee made recommendations which would be reviewed on your agenda number 9. And the important output from that committee said, we're right now we're doing notices in the paper, we're doing signs, we're doing letters to people. That's all fine, but we're probably not giving them enough time. If we're going to give them a week, giving them 2 weeks is probably better than a week, because it gives them more time to analyze the impact they're going to have on their property. In terms of signs, when you're going to have a cell tower, you're going to need more signs than you're going to need for just a variance for somebody's property if they want to build a little closer to the road. So those differences should be explained in the code. So the code should say how many signs, or where should the signs be if it's a cell tower, where should the signs be, and how many signs if it's just a variance request. So the net of all that is that there seems to be a need to give people more time and better notification. We need to document that, put it in the code, and I think you have in front of you a recommendation that has input from all different sides that seems to make a lot of sense, that answers those things. And the most important, and then the final point is, we don't want to do something that's going to cause a lot of extra work for the planning department. I mean, they have more than enough to do already, so we don't want to impose something that would be a lot more work. This really just changes some timelines. They still put up signs, they still send out letters. It does it in an organized way that's identified in the code. So there shouldn't be a big impact on labor or the amount of time that has to be spent by staff. Thank you.
Thank you both. Our next item will be the staff update.
All right, so I sent you all an email. Thursday, May 17th, there's a webinar that would count towards your continuing education credits. It will be here. It's from 9 to 12:30. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know. I know we have a couple members of the BZA who are going to come, and I know 3 members of the Planning Commission already signed up for it. So if you're available to, that'd be great. It will fulfill your needs. It's Thursday, May 17th at 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And that'll fulfill your yearly needs. So if you're going to show up, and you can let me know last minute, because I've already arranged for it to happen. So if something changes and you all can make it, it's great. Just let me know. And then my next item is, have any of you all been involved in like a big, like $30 million project before? Anybody? Anybody? But you have. So the Lakeside Lodge, which is going in, regardless of the other politics that are happening, Lakeside Lodge wouldn't be possible if the language that you all hadn't had voted upon to add to the control-free district to allow that use. It wouldn't have been able to happen without going before the Board of Zoning Appeals and a bunch of other steps. So the direct effect of the Planning Commission is that we now have a $30 million project that's supposed to employ 20 people in the county as a direct result of you all's actions. So I just wanted to point that out to you all. That's what I got. And you
Thank
too,
you,
Mr.
Adam.
Rubin.
Number
And you as
7,
well.
discussion on 2020 comprehensive plan.
If I may. I've been in talks with Alta, since we're kind of at kind of a holding pattern right now until the budget gets passed. Alta is willing to give me some education on comprehensive plans and corridors for an amount of money yet to be determined. And I'm going to get some education from them. That way I'm ahead of the game when we start, and if worse comes to worse and the money isn't there, I'll have something to work off of. So that's really all I have at the moment. Also, the Ag Board's actively working on the comprehensive plan element, since that has to come from scratch. So that's what I have for the comp plan part.
Any
If anybody has
further
any questions.
discussions or comments?
Did we, last time, wasn't we gonna send a note to county council or something asking, has that happened yet, or when does that?
Yes,
Did we
ma'am.
get a response from them, or?
The budget, well, after we sent the letter officially after we had the workshop. And at the workshop, we had determined that it's going to into the budget. We formalized what we said at the meeting. Their vote on the budget, including the $89,000 and $25,000, will be their response.
Okay.
When is that budget cycle?
Oh, well, the fiscal year ends June 30th, so we start July, but the discussions, our first budget meeting is coming Tuesday, not tomorrow, but the following Tuesday. No, it is tomorrow, dang it. Yeah, it is tomorrow. It is tomorrow, 17th. Yeah, first budget meeting is tomorrow. We really had a preliminary budget meeting.
Yeah.
The first hardcore budget meeting is tomorrow night.
I guess two things. One, tick tock, the clock's ticking. Do we, start looking at, we all said, well, we're gonna take out the first 12 pages, we're gonna take out these, do we start this process of stuff that we know we're gonna eliminate, to condense this thing? So if and when Alta does come in, then we're that much farther ahead.
I've already started nitpicking stuff out of there. I haven't dedicated a huge amount of time or a set amount of time, but I've already gone through and I've probably eliminated like 20 pages, what I think are technically called fluff. So I've started that process. If you have any input, some things are required to have in there.
Right.
Some things are not, but there's some additional language that's either dated or not pertinent that we can definitely get rid of.
Okay.
So.
Then I guess we'll probably know a little bit more after tomorrow.
I can't guarantee that. It's an initial, like I say, more formal budget meeting. I think the administrator's gonna present his budget. The school district presents his budget tomorrow. And my recollection of the past few years, or the past few fiscal years, is that it's an informational meeting, that they don't do a whole lot of action. I would expect you to get a better feel on that $89,000 request probably in the subsequent meeting, my best guess.
I guess my next question is, do we start a contingency, plan of action if the $89,000 does not make it into the budget? Because now we're gonna be sitting around for another month, and there goes another month down the drain. Just asking the question.
No, it's a good question. I can't do the first thing without the first dollar, to be honest. I mean, I can start tearing apart the current comp plan, which I'll kind of kick into a little bit of higher gear, the comprehensive plan we have now, and start ripping out stuff I don't think needs to be there. We did just kind of look through all the census stuff, which is just gonna change with the census. So that's really where I'm starting at. And then if for some reason the $89,000 doesn't get approved, we're gonna have to find out how much money does get approved, because it'll obviously give us an amount of money for it. So whatever that is, we'll have to work within our means for that.
And then, I guess, last question on this, not to keep dragging this out.
No, ask away.
Would it be smart for, after this review, and we don't have to do it this year, but to appropriate $10,000 a year to go into an escrow fund, or so in the next 10 years, we don't run into the same issue?
Generally don't have escrow funds within government appropriations. Things don't carry over year to year. They're your annual expenses, and you can't bind subsequent councils, so that would be a problematic thing. I understand the fiscal sense in doing that. There may be a means to work with the planning commission's budget such that it has a buildup of funds by some means. I'll talk to the administrator about that, but generally, no, there's no such thing as an escrow amount that we can build up over from year to year to
And
year.
I didn't know if escrow is the right
I know.
term, but
That's, I know what you mean. And
contingency fund.
that type of account.
Okay. I'm done. Well, I mean,
Yeah, that's-
the clock's ticking and
Good questions.
Perhaps a GoFundMe page?
I'd have to.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move along to item number 8, discussion on clarification of certain code sections bearing on land use and development as contained in chapter 26, 32, and 38 of the Oconee County Code of Ordinances. Mr. Adams.
If I may. So, right now in 32, it says there's a minimum lot size for subdivisions of 0.57 acres. A couple things. That 0.57 was based upon a DHEC standard, and I'm using the air quotes there, standard. DHEC never had that standard codified. It was something like everyone knew, like, oh, I know this to be true, but when you dig beneath the layers, it's just existed because everyone believed in it. You know, if enough people believe in it, it's the truth. And so we ended up codifying it as 0.57 acres. Now, that's in direct conflict with the minimum lot size we have for other zoning districts. It's unclear. So I proposed some language that says, you know, and see all that, everything there, that big long paragraph. It also includes language regarding unbuildable lots, which we've had some issues with in the past. But the stuff in the red is really kind of where we're looking at. So the minimum lot size shall be determined by underlying zoning districts located in chapter 38, period. That means if you're in lake residential, industrial, ag, traditional rural development, you're not bound by the 0.57 acres, you're bound by your underlying zoning district. So quarter acre, half acre, 1 acre, 5 acre, whatever that zoning district in 38 says. So that way it's contiguous. Now, we do have the lake overlay district, which minimum lot size control-free district is we don't have one. So we do have in the lake overlay district, we have a density thing. So do we want a bunch of, 10th acre lots along the lake? So my recommendations here, I gave you 3 options for this, is to have no minimum, just have no minimum lot size, to have a quarter acre, which is what the lake residential and residential districts run, those also border the lake, or we have another amount of land, or we keep with the 0.57 or 0.5 or things of that nature. For my money, I think the quarter acre matches the other existing zoning districts, but that's just my thoughts on it. The rest of the language says all required setbacks have to be met. No parts of septic systems can be loaded in any road right-of-way. Creation of lots that cannot be built upon due to dimensional setbacks, buffers, or easements must have the stamp at the bottom there that says, we know we can't build on this. We're recording this, but we know we can't do anything with it other than own it. Sometimes people have to record like on something really, really tiny for lakes, for lake trigonometry, because both Duke and the Army Corps have some voodoo trigonometry. So people often get tiny, tiny lots. So that's what this whole paragraph is. The big thing that you all, I feel, have to figure out is what should be the minimum lot size. Go.
So we need a motion to approve staff's recommendations.
We have to figure out the minimum lot size
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. So you have 3 options: no minimum, quarter acre, or something else. Or if you all have another thought, ideas, things of that nature that we can do, I'd be happy to bat it around.
We did all the talking last time.
Well, I was just thinking you were the builder amongst us.
I don't see why a quarter acre wouldn't do, since it goes in with the, lake residential and residential.
I just saw you.
Facial expression?
Oh, yeah, that's recorded. I'm saving that one for
I mean,
the best of.
isn't Moses covered by density or controlled by density?
I'm sorry,
in
what?
Zoning districts?
We don't,
I mean, all the zoning districts have density requirements.
except for control-free district.
Except for control-free,
However, the Lake Overlay District has a net density of 2 per acre.
right.
So control-free, you can pile it on. You can put as many as you can fit in there. Basically, as many as you can septic tank or get DEC approval for,
Unless you have sewer.
unless you have sewer.
Right. But to me, density would probably be a better way to go. Or, to go, it's controlled by I mean, there'd be certain areas where if you were building certain things, everybody keeps bringing up that place down in Clemson.
In Clemson.
Patrick Square. So if we put a minimum lot size in, then that might later conflict with traditional neighborhoods.
That's correct. However, a traditional neighborhood can have a separate, like for instance, the planned development district that we have, although it may be in a already zoned area, it would get its own zoning district. So if we did neighborhood development, we could work that language around. As of right now, it's 0.57, which is one of those items that kind of that precludes like a Patrick Square style development from occurring in this area. What are you leaning towards, sir? Is it a density issue?
Is this just for subdivisions that we're talking about this? Because that first sentence is talking about subdivisions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and that's, of course, a little bit tricky, because again, this is the interplay with chapter 32 and chapter 38 that have become very much blended together, but this is a chapter 32 provision, and so, and Adam, tell me if I'm wrong, I may be on the wrong page, but what the attempt is, first, part one is just strike this 0.57, it's generally not applied, certainly not in the control-free district, so get that language out. Replace it with the first sentence in red. Minimum lot size shall be determined by the underlying zoning district. So that's period. So control-free district, you don't have a minimum lot size. And then you can start out the next with a however, and this is the part that you're talking about with the lake overlay. What Adam's bringing to your attention here is within the lake overlay, do you want to have a minimum lot size? Because there are control-free areas within the lake overlay. And so it's kind of a two-part thing. First, get rid of the 0.57 everywhere, so just, whatever the district is that has a minimum lot size, that's what governs. Except for if it's in the lake overlay, where you may have control-free, do you all want to attempt to put a minimum lot size in that area where there's control-free?
Can we do it in those two different steps? Can we make the motion on one thing and then on the other?
Sure.
I make a motion that we do away with the 0.57 and replace it with the first sentence. Do I need to read the
In
sentence?
red.
The minimum lot size shall be determined by the underlying zoning district located in chapter 38?
Yes.
Okay.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
So that means we're going by density.
As that stands right there for the lake overlay, which is the second part, that would be determined by density, as it is now. There wouldn't be any change to it.
So at this point, all we're doing is changing that very first sentence. There's a minimum size of subdivision at 0.57. We're changing it to the underlying zoning district that it's located in. That's all we're doing at this point.
Correct. That's the motion.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, now our second part is, is to do, something with the lake overlay. What, do y'all have a lot or a acreage size in mind, or no minimum, quarter acre, half acre?
Is it the same like on Kiwi and Hartwell? Like they're in different districts, zoning districts, so each one of those zoning districts would have different lot size?
The lake overlay only applies to Kiwi and Jocassee. Lake Hartwell is managed by the Army Corps, so they have a giant setback that your property never touches. and they have very strict, stringent rules regarding that. So this would just apply to Kiwi and Jocassee, and effectively really just Kiwi, because that's where most of the houses are built.
Okay, unless y'all have any, problem, I'm gonna let Mr. Cogner get up. You got 30 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Jim Codner. The issue of lot size around the lake is a big issue for the folks around the lake and for anyone who's on the lake a lot. The lake is primarily developed with half-acre lots. The .57 has been in effect. And in general, half-acre lots have been the norm. And to get to where you get down to even a quarter acre or less, you're going to find out you have, like someone said, trailer lots and that kind of thing. And that's just not appropriate for the lake as it's developed now. I'd sure like to see a half-acre lot size minimum for the control-free area at least. But allowing it to be just as small as it wants to be is really not appropriate for the lake.
Okay. All right. Unless any other objection, I'm gonna let Tom give his 30 seconds since he missed public comment.
First correction. On Corps engineers, there is not, the setback is set by elevation, has nothing to do with distance.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay, it's elevation? All right, that makes sense.
Okay. Secondly, as far as minimum lot size, don't forget that this is gonna take into account any kind of multifamily. In other words, and we allow multifamily on the lake and within the overlay districts. And so I don't see how, now all of a sudden if we have a minimum lot size in the lake areas or the overlay districts, now all of a sudden we're gonna have a conflict with the zoning thing saying we've gotta have X number of units per acre, but no, we can't really because it's gonna have to be half acre. So we're gonna dig a deeper hole if we ain't careful here.
Thank you. What is staff's recommendation for this?
Oh, staff recommendation, the big first part, the first sentence, that was a huge thing, although it's just one sentence. I mean, like I said, two sentences made that Lakeside Lodge, so one sentence can mean a lot. So that first sentence was really important. I plugged that within the Lake Overlay District option in here because I knew that it's if we didn't address it here, it would get addressed up at council. So just something that needs to be really thought about and what you all kind of want to kick around and talk about it for a bit. We won't send like one sentence at a time up, so even though you just voted on the one for the first sentence here, like I'm not gonna send that independent of fixing the whole thing. So if we need to keep talking about it, if you want some more time to think about it and talk with people, we can definitely do that.
And why do we need anything after the first sentence?
So in Lake Overlay right now, so what combined with
Why
our,
don't we, I mean, the density in Lake Overlay is no more than 2 units per acre.
as it stands right now, you could walk around our subdivision regulations. So it wouldn't be a giant stretch for someone who's savvy enough to pick up 100 acres and walk around our zoning regulations and say, I'm gonna put a 1/10 of an acre there, quarter acre here, something there, and the overall.
But they're still limited, in that 100 acres, they're still only limited to 2 units per acre.
That's true.
So there's more green space, more.
I'll not advertise how to walk around. People can get around our zoning regulations, so I'll be happy to tell you when I'm not advertising it. But it's a possibility. It's definitely doable, especially with, when you talk to different people, things occur, as you're well aware. So I think it's something that probably should be addressed for the lake, but if we want to kind of kick it around some more, I'm certainly happy to not include it. And the market builds what the market wants to build. So half-acre lots, as I believe Mr. Codner pointed out, they're going for quite a bit of money at the moment. That's probably what the market demands. So.
Let's maybe hold off on this particular part till next meeting, give us another couple of weeks or so to read some about it and figure out, see how we want to go one way or the other. Anybody have an objection to that?
No.
None, plus it'd be good to have a full table here.
Bring it back on the next agenda, and we'll hopefully, in the meantime, try to get us some more information and things that we can look at to make a better decision on this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, with that,
Quick question. Mr. Markovich, could you possibly give us the ups and downs of that next time? After you've had time to look at it or whatever?
Who's ready to give me up?
I kind of need your opinion on both sides. I need the good and the bad.
and Mr. Carter, do the same on the Kiwi side too. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the discussion for the BZA ad hoc committee recommendations.
Mister, did we want to look at the parking? It's on the back
Oh,
side
is it
of
on, I'm sorry. Let's just go ahead and do that one then. Let's do the parking thing,
park thing.
the parking thing.
If I may, so, we don't have any language that stops parking from the setbacks or allows it. We do have language that says a structure shall not be built in the setback. I need some direction from you all and for it to be codified. Do we allow parking in the setback? And that's really what this speaks to. We had a brief discussion about it, I wanna say 2 meetings ago, where I believe you said, Ms. Lyles, no one's gonna tell me where to park on my own land. And I, kind of took that, so in C, I believe in C I put that there. I gave a few options here to kind of kick around. Well, the first one is parking shall not be permitted within the setbacks. And that's period. Commercial, residential, whatever, you're not parking in the setbacks. The second one is parking shall be allowed inside the setbacks with some parameters met. And the third one is parking is not permitted on commercial uses, but it is permitted on residential, but you can't build parking, such as parking lots and spaces inside the setbacks. So the last one, that's my thought. We had a BZA meeting, the last one I wanna say was about partially parking in the setbacks. It was, the gas station had the tanks and some parking in it, across from on Cherry Road. So it's something that comes up quite often, is that I wanna build parking here, can I build parking here? Parking is structure, when you pour concrete and engineered curbs, it's a structure. So, should we allow parking, or should we not allow parking in the setbacks? And if so, how and why and where?
Well, I feel like, at least it's been my understanding that a big reason for the setback is so that when you pull your car into the driveway, it won't be sticking out in the street.
That's certainly part of it, sir.
And that would say you could park in the setback, because that's what it's for.
I have no problem with option B.
It all seems so easy until you try and put it into words. What, on a residential aspect, does parking constitute a driveway?
It's a question to have. That's a good question. I figured you or, I think you or, Mr. Johnson would have brought that up. That's something else. I didn't want to further muddy the issue without having, be able to have a conversation on it. Should a driveway be, we all know the driveway has to go through a setback. You have the road here, your property here, there's a setback in between your road and the property. We know that there needs to be a driveway in the setback. Question is, should it run the entire length of the side setback? If you wanna kinda put it there, should you be able to do a 30-foot wide or 40-foot wide driveway, if you're a commercial aspect? That's a whole nother part of this I was kinda walk us into, but you jumped us into, so that's perfectly fine.
Well, I know several driveways, residential driveways that are already in the setback, that run the whole length of the setback, especially on the side.
I've had 2 phone calls in the last 4 months, I'd say, where people are complaining that their neighbor is building a driveway in the setback. Well, that to me is a structure. However, I lucked out of those because their homeowners association jumped on them, not allowing that. So that was kind of a luck out for me, just because it didn't follow the site plan. So next time, there might not be a homeowner association, so it'd be nice to have a little bit of directive here. For me, it's a structure. Structures aren't allowed in the setback, except where I know they have to be.
If it's a very small lot and their house is pretty much gonna take up the whole lot, where are they supposed to park if they don't park in the setback?
If it's a control-free district, that's a great question. In all the other zoning districts, the driveways have to be, the garages have to be at least 20 feet off of that and can't face it, so parking doesn't occur in the setback. So there's already language around the other zoning districts as far as like placement of garages and parking. That's, because lots, generally speaking, in the county are much larger. It's never really been an issue that I haven't run across anyone think, oh, you gotta move your driveway or move your garage.
So you're saying there's language in the matrix about it for everything except control-free?
Yes, 38.9.3.
Then I don't think we need to put any more language in there because we don't need to be regulating it in control-free.
Okay. So parking itself, that's for driveways and how the garage doors are set up. For parking, control-free makes up so much of the county. So if we don't regulate it all, so parking is allowed in the setbacks regardless.
Parking is not a structure. It's a movable, something movable that don't sit there occasionally they do sit there for a couple of days. Why can't they park in it? It's their land. Whether it's a setback or not, it's their land. Why can't they have a parking spot in the setback?
When you're
That's
saying
completely-
constructing, are you considering it like a concreted driveway or?
Like concrete parking spaces. So for instance, the gas station that just went in, it's control-free district, it abuts residential uses. They're being done a very nice job of landscaping and things like that, but they didn't have to. They could have, so if we're gonna allow, with this language, what discussion we're having now, they could have poured concrete right up to the property line and parked their gas trucks right there. And assuming that the other people followed their setbacks, the house is only 5 feet off of that.
That's
So that-
commercial.
We don't have
That
any,
was a commercial use.
we don't have any commercial differentiation.
Maybe we need to.
Okay.
If we're talking about residential, is one thing, commercial is something totally different. And there should be different rules for commercial property or setbacks and what have you than they should be on residential.
And then to further complicate this, because that's what you all like, now that we have our first condo and condo hotels going in, that's a residential and a commercial use. We're gonna have to address that as well, now that we're gonna start getting condos in. So we have to look at multifamily in that same breath. So we have a resident, we have on one side, we have park wherever, it's your land, park as you will. On the other side, we have commercial, on the other side, because there's 3 sides to this thing. And we have other residential and zoning and things of that nature. So you see where I'm confused
Well,
about what we should do.
in a subdivision, they usually have all kind of restrictions and things where you can and can't park, what you can and can't do.
Certainly.
You can and can't put your lawnmower.
True story.
On the rest of the residential areas in the county, that are control-free are, I don't think there should be a restriction on where you can and can't park your vehicle. I mean, it's your property, and usually cities have their own regulations. Your subdivisions have all kind of regulations. But as far as the rest of the county, just take my property for that matter. You have no right to tell me where I can and cannot park a car just because it has a 10-foot setback. If I want to park a car in that 10-foot setback, so be it. It's my property.
What about building parking in there, if I may? Like building parking spaces and
Building a
things
garage,
No, building like parking spaces, sir.
you don't build parking spaces. You just clear out a space and park your cotton picking car there. You're not building anything.
Some people do pave
Right.
So
the
what?
place where they park their car.
Right, and so this conversation is one I've had multiple times. So that's, you all now understand where what the question I'm asking is that parking spaces are a structure. They're built, you pay someone to do them, they get engineering plans, you have to buy materials, you have to do land preparation and upkeep to it. So perhaps if I can phrase this better, should parking spaces, engineered constructed parking spaces, which you can do whatever you want on, should they be allowed in setbacks? Residential and commercial getting treated different? Is that something that you all are looking at, or?
I don't think we should add any more controls to control free.
Okay.
And the other districts already have setback, and parking rules.
Is this strictly for control free?
No.
I've got to step out for a minute. I have an emergency.
Yes, ma'am. We'll hold off on any votes until then.
All right,
Any discussion?
we just sort of adjourn
Want me
for
to
just a
Pause it.
second till she gets back. 'Cause we don't have a
Can we
quorum.
hand out the ad deal?
So it is still recording, and the mics are still recording? Just throwing that out there. Just,
The legal ad bill?
The legal ad bill.
Prescription ad bill. $800.
we're kind of here for example.
If we really wanna make it complicated.
Garage door, and then it relates to parking after that. I got it right here if you want it in adult size. Ms. Murphy, how's it going? It's 38.9.3. I gotta use, it's, no one ever has. That's why. It's,
Yeah, I
it's
just-
under the second
I called
graphic
you when I
of
wanted to
38.9.3.
Usually my husband's my backup, but he must be in the shop and not answering the phone, so I had to find out what's going on.
Motion to reconvene,
Here we go.
all in favor? Yeah.
Everything okay, Ms. Lyles?
Yes.
Use that gap.
All right, we're back. So this is for all setbacks in every zoning district?
That's how it is here, but there's plenty of room, nothing, this isn't in final code form, so if we want to say, except for control-free district, we actually plug this into 38.9.3 under that same language. Yeah, right now, this is everything, and we can distill it down into, we don't want to talk about control-free district, okay, so we can talk about the rest of the zoning districts, and if that's something you're all interested in, or, I mean,
Do any of the other, what does the other, I mean, I know this is be a long thing, but does the other zoning classifications have restrictions in parking, anything?
no one does. The only
No
language
restrictions,
regarding
anything.
parking in our code is in Appendix A, and that's for the planned development districts, really. Or if the Board of Zoning Appeals wants to, say, for a variance, you can do this, but you have to do this, as well. So we don't have any parking, and I'm great us not having parking minimums for commercial. I think it's a seems to be a very forward-thinking thing. Let the businesses build how much parking they need. Because at this point, we're not a major city. We don't have to worry about people stealing parking spaces not available. We have plenty of open space. People actually want parking maximums. But we have no language about parking, which if we're gonna say, hey, we don't have any parking standards, we need to put that in there. It just needs to be done, because this is just kind of like looking for something that's not there. It kind of feels like a little worse, like we don't have any parking, I'm sure we do, so. If we're gonna say, hey, park where you want, build parking wherever you want to, parking spaces are not structures, you can build them where you like, that's fine, I just need to have that language. That's what I need.
If we divide this into residential and commercial, forget the other thing, I mean, would that simplify it or complicate it?
Yes.
So which one?
I think having different standards for residential and commercial, if we're gonna have standards, probably makes sense, because commercial uses generate more traffic. They have more noise effects from vehicles and things of that nature. So having a parking standard for commercial different than residential seems to make more sense.
I mean, 'cause in residential, I mean, there's no way to avoid, I mean, and we're talking driveway and parking, but is the driveway also parking area? And, I mean, more so in residential than probably commercial. And, you know, right now, you know, most of the covenants read that driveways are allowed in the setbacks.
Correct.
So if we say that we can't put driveways, or we can't park within the setbacks, then that means we can't put a driveway within the setback, correct? So that's where I think, you know, I'm not for making this thing longer, but it seems like we need a paragraph for residential and then break out commercial, which sounds like that might even be a little easier to.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine with me. We can utilize, if we wanted to break it into residential, commercial, that's great. That's kind of where option C here goes, speaking towards. And it kind of briefly mentions, it says parking within setbacks is not permitted on property used for any commercial enterprise, even if the property is also used for residential purposes, such as mixed use condominium hotel. Parking within the setback is permitted on residential lots. Prepared, engineered, or constructed parking surfaces or devices are not permitted within the setbacks. And that would apply to both. That's kind of where I was going with that. Now, if we think that a residential, single-family resident, oh, sorry. Okay, I'm doing a good job, aren't I? Take a breath away. I was on a rant there, too.
Define prepared, engineered, or constructing parking services.
I was gonna ask our resident builder to help me out with that.
I don't know what that means.
It sounds like if you're gonna concrete your driveway, you can't do it, is what that sounds like, because you have to prepare the surface and construct concrete surface.
And we'd also have to jump into driveways and things of that nature within there, because people do ask now what we can do. So I started off with this parking, and the idea was for us, if we got the idea of we like parking, yes or no, then we kind of push into driveways and say, okay, well, we said yes here, no here, we kind of go for it. So maybe, how do we all feel about commercial resident, splitting up commercial and residential as far as two different things?
Well, people like me, I park in my driveway. I have a garage, but I don't always park in my garage. So it is not only a driveway, it is also a parking. So you can't really differentiate them, because not everyone has a garage. They park in their driveway, so then it becomes a parking structure. So I think we're getting too much in the weeds.
Okay.
Does, the fire marshal have anything to say about this? We've got fire department regulations or anything?
I have not asked, but I can certainly ask Chief King.
I'm sure that they want access around the house to get to the back and that sort of thing but I don't know if they've got any kind of rules that, we certainly wouldn't want to conflict with something they already have.
No, it's good. It's a good question. I'll definitely ask him tomorrow.
That's why they have those 200-foot hoses.
Yeah,
To get around behind it.
Be able to walk past.
Well, believe me, if they need to get around there, they will get there.
So what if instead of looking at residential at all, what about just commercial?
Yeah, I think we need to definitely exclude residential. If we don't exclude everything, we definitely need to exclude residential.
Residential completely or control-free district residential?
I think completely. How else are you gonna get from the road to your house if you've got a tiny lot and your driveway's going right up the setback?
So what you're saying is make sure control-free district has a minimum lot size.
I agree with her. We should, I mean, the residential, I think we should leave alone, leave it as is. If they want to pave their cotton picking driveway all the way up to the setback, or that's not a structure that you can't bypass. It's not something you can't walk. You walk on it, you don't have to climb up over it. You don't have to walk around it to get to these areas, so even if they pave it 10 foot or 5 foot into the setback, it's still not affecting the setback. Your actual building is still 10 feet off your property line. I think we should leave them alone and just concentrate more so on commercial. If staff thinks they don't need to be parking or driveways and setbacks for the commercial, that's another thing. I think we need to leave the residential stuff alone right now, as far as parking and driveways.
We can sure complicate something. With all due respect. Where did this, you say you're having problems with?
People, I get phone
Commercial?
calls about it. I get commercial and residential, both. All these, the 18 items, 18 or 20 items I came up with, we just keep a list on the board of people, like, just questions that we're like, this could be worded better or worded at all inside of our code. And things that have shown up on multiple occasions are the reasons that list got distilled down. Like, we have one-offs all the time, but for things that constantly are a question for us, that's why it got brought forward. So it is a question.
I mean, I think residential would probably be a pretty easy fix of, residential's, whether control-free or whatever, is allowed unless, covenants, restrictions, subdivision covenants, restrictions prohibited. One sentence for residential. Commercial, again, I kind of go back to a lot of that's in each zoning matrix. A lot of the setbacks are in that, and that language probably needs to be clarified a little bit.
Sure.
That make sense?
I think it should be based on the zoning district. Is that what you're trying to say? That the
More or
commercial
less,
should
yeah,
be
yeah.
based on the zoning district? Because some of them, it wouldn't cause a problem, some of them, yeah, I can see it causing a problem.
Short, very short, please.
Real quickly, I think I have a solution for Adam's problem. Okay.
Don't answer the phone.
629-1145 requires that in some cases, if you know of a deed restriction that would prevent you from issuing a permit. So in other words, and staff is not required to look these up. That's was done that way for a very specific reason, so we don't have to do title searches every time we want to pull a building permit. But the minute somebody makes a phone call to you and says, hey, we don't think they should be able to do this because we have restrictive covenants that bars them from being able to put that driveway there. Now, it's something that is known to you. Okay, therefore, then you have a reason to look that up and say, hey, no, we can't issue a permit in this particular case because of this particular situation, because it became known to you. Previous to that, you didn't know about it, so.
And if I may, that's 100% correct. If we don't enforce covenants and restrictions, for instance, there's one very large subdivision in this county that we have just a verbal agreement with who sends us their permitting that this house or whatever has matched their rules and restrictions. And then we attach that to our permit because we know, we have that knowledge. So a couple of the residential issues I've had with parking have definitely been inside of deed restricted communities. The commercial ones are not within deed restriction communities. And so much of the county is not subdivisions as we know it. So this perhaps wouldn't speak so much to the known subdivisions. It would speak to future development as to what we can and can't do. So it looks like we're shying away from doing anything related to residential, something more towards commercial, even if it's in the control-free, since almost all of our commercial is in the control-free district. I don't know really of anything that's built commercial that's in a commercial district. Maybe there is, but.
Can we sit on this?
Sure. Fine with me, it's up to y'all.
maybe the other three has something to bring to the table, because it doesn't feel like we're ready.
Okay, it's up to y'all. I mean, you all tell me.
We can just table this and bring it back next time.
Y'all can move to table it, but because it's not an ordinance, it doesn't really matter if he just brings it back on the agenda. If nobody wants to make a motion right now, then you just have it back on the agenda.
However, I don't
It
care.
works for me.
Sure.
I think if you could take some of that input and maybe try and
That was great input I got there. That
massage
was,
some of that input.
that was input, right? Yeah, yes, sir.
Valuable input that we.
Yeah.
I will, I mean, I'm gonna
Give
pour.
us pros and cons of regulating it in commercial. We've all decided we don't want it regulated in residential. So tell us why we should, or why we should not regulate it in commercial.
I can do that.
Okay, this should be
I get some.
happy discussion. Number 9, discussion on BZA ad hoc committee recommendations on notice changes.
I'd like to recommend that we table this till we have a full committee, seeing how 2 of us was already on that ad hoc committee.
Sure.
I think it would be better if we have the other voices in the room when we vote on this.
Certainly.
Motion to table?
Motion table.
You still need a second in discussion.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? So,
I oppose.
Oh,
3 to 1. So, any old business? New business? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye.